welcome to the Improv Summit. As you can see, I look a little different today because I don't have my usual lighting equipment with me. I'm visiting my parents in Florida, and also my hair is a mess because it's humidity in Florida, as in LA there is none. So there's a big difference, and my hair just likes to do that. Anyway, enough about me. Let's talk about our brilliant guest that we have today. I was told I say very important guest every week, and so I need to change it up. So today I have a brilliant guest with me today. That brilliant guest is Marc. Marc, how's it going?
Wow, I'm flattered. Thank you.
You're
I'm
welcome. How's
excited
it
to be
going?
here with our brilliant host.
Oh, thanks. You're too kind.
Good to see you.
You too. Let's just dive in and talk about your improv background. What is your background in improv, whatever that means to you?
I was very, very lucky in that I grew up in a first ring suburb of a very like a lower middle class, blue collar first ring suburb of Detroit. And the lucky part, that's not the lucky part. The lucky part was that when I was a teenager and getting really into comedy, there happened to be a Second City Comedy Theater that opened in downtown Detroit at like the exact time I was getting into it. And right at the time I like got my driver's license and I could go down and I would drive downtown because there aren't a million Second City Comedy Theaters. You know, there's the main headquarters in Chicago. There's Second City Toronto. It's been there since the early 80s. And then there's been various incarnations that have popped up and gone away, but not a million. Like, you know, Vegas existed for a few years. Detroit existed only for a few years. LA, you know, existed for, 15 years. But so Detroit opened and Second City opened. It was there for, I think, about 12 years in total.
Mm.
And happened to be right at the exact time I love improv. And you could go, the way the Second City is set up in the cities that have resident companies is there's a main show that's mostly written sketch comedy with a little bit of improv in it. And then afterwards, there was the free improv set that anybody could come to. So the free improv set was very appealing to me as like a 16-year-old with no money. I would drive up and watch these improv sets and was blown away by it. I'd never really seen improv before.
Mm.
And that was the first thing that hooked me into it.
Great. I love that. I love that. Actually, it made me think of because you actually taught me one level at Second City. I don't remember which. I think 4 or 5, something like that.
Yeah, I
And
remember
and
re-improvising a lot.
yeah. So I was going to bring that up. Reimprovisation. One thing I don't talk a lot about on this show that I actually want to bring up is the idea of reimprovisation, which I almost kind of like it better than improv and sketch in its own little way, because it's not a muscle that is constantly used in improv. Um, for those that don't know, reimprovisation is essentially improvisers are improvising a scene, and then afterwards they get some feedback from a coach or an instructor and kind of do the scene again with notes. So it's kind of gearing it towards a sketch mindset, but you're not actually writing anything down. You're just taking it and literally re-improvising the scene. But what are some things that you notice as far as reimprovisation that are beneficial for continuing improv education or for sketch? What are some tools within reimprovisation that can help guide within both of those?
Yeah, it's a really, I mean, I feel similarly to how you do in that I really appreciate re-improvisation. It's not done many places. It was in
Mm-mm.
like the modern improvisational, era, which started essentially in like the 1940s until now in the United States. It's really only prominently done at the Second City,
Mm.
and they do it, and they started doing it there as soon as they opened in the 50s and in late 50s, and they used it to develop sketches, right? So they would go to the audience and say, we want some ideas. The point of it was they wanted to create theater that spoke directly to their audience and what was on the minds of their audience. So there was
Mm.
this feeling that theater as a whole had become elitist and detached from like everyday working folks. So they opened Second City in a working class area of a working class city in Chicago, and they would go out and say, give us some suggestions. What's on your mind? What's your job? What's something in the news you care about? What are you worried about with your kids? And then they would say, we're going to go backstage and come up with scenarios. We'll be back in a half an hour. They used to take a half an hour intermission, and they'd go backstage and they'd go away for half an hour. The audience would drink and eat. And backstage, they would look at all the suggestions that were given, and they would come up with premises. And they would tell the audience this. They would come back out and say, we've got premises based on what you've given us, and we're going to improvise some scenes. So they would improvise in front of the audience, and the stuff that went well, then they'd go get into rehearsal the next day, work it further, put it up against in front of an audience again, and they eventually develop these into written sketches. And Second City still does that, and I find it is tremendously difficult. It's not easy to do. Reimprovisation is hard, but it can be really rewarding. And I think it's an amazing way to create a sketch show.
Yeah, I agree. And I really, it's very interesting because I never really think about it, but I feel like there's a lot of times where I use it. Even on this show, I've used it many times. I mean, some of the stuff you don't see because it's outtakes, you don't ever see it, but it's like taking a scene. It's like, oh, I like this idea. Can we do it again and switch roles or do this or do that? And thinking about it is re-improvising. And I know that when I teach kids, one of the biggest things I do is I'll say, okay, everyone, watch this scene really, really closely. And then I'll say, okay, you're going to do the same scene, but do it again the exact same way. And in a way, it's not exactly re-improvising, but it is in a way because it's taking the exact same scene, putting different people into it, and having them do the same scene. So inevitably, things are going to change, which is great. And I think I just thought about it because you taught me a lot of re-improvisation, and so I was just like, oh, let me bring this up, this idea of re-improvisation. But that being
Yeah,
said, let's move
and I
into.
remember you being really good at it, and really
Oh, thanks.
embracing it and liking it. Really, because I think it tends to either be a thing that it pops for, like, it's polarizing. It's like it doesn't click for some people. They don't like using improv in that way, and I get that. And then for the people who it does click for, like you're saying, it clicked for you and you liked it, they tend to be really good at it and get the most out of it. And I remember you had a lot of really great pieces.
Yeah, thanks. It was a lot of like where it's like, when you're improvising, it can feel sometimes a little stressful because you're like, I don't know what to do. But then taking the re-improvisation, it's like, oh, I can go back and I can make this thing. I can play with this, and then it's still my scene that I'm getting to improvise, but I'm changing a couple things to make it even better than it already was. And
Yeah.
so I love that because it's like I may have said a weird thing and I'm like self-conscious about the weird thing I said, but now I can go back and not say the weird thing that made me self-conscious and still make it a great, an even better scene from the already
Yes,
great
yes,
scene.
yeah.
So I love that. But I want to talk about quickly about, because we talked about like, re-improvisation, something that I really enjoy. Are there any moments, whether as a performer or as a teacher or as a coach, that you really remember of an aha moment, whether in yourself or in a student from watching a scene or a show or playing or whatever it is that really stuck to you as like, aha, I understand improv now.
That's interesting. I mean, there's probably many that come to mind. I remember a big moment for me early on was well, first of all, when I started in the mid 90s, it was the mid 90s when I first started taking classes and improvising, and then got hired by Second City. It was a different vibe. I mean, that's like 25 years
Hmm.
ago. It was a different vibe in the community than in the overall improv community than it is today, in that it's gotten a lot more loving over
Hmm.
time. It's gotten a lot more loving. And I'm told that that's been an evolution through the decades, like since
Yeah.
that modern American improv movement kind of started in the 40s. Like the folks who did it then in the 50s and in the years of the Compass and the Committee and the early days of Second City will tell you, like, it was rough. Those old directors would literally throw chairs at the performers on stage when they weren't yes-anding each other correctly. Like, it was
Hmm.
really, really a dogfight up there. And there's been a movement over the decades towards a more caring, embracing, help your partner love each other type of thing. But like when
Hmm.
I was a student, like this will seem crazy, I think, to a lot of people who've come to improvisation in the last few years, because it's not like this anymore. But like when I was a student first learning improv at the Second City in Detroit, we had our very first student show. It was our level 3 student show where we're going to improvise short form games for the very first time on the main stage. Like all our friends, you know, you invite your friends and family and stuff to come see it. The main stage cast members used to come to the student shows, get drunk, drink, and heckle the students. And heckle, and I don't mean like goofing around heckling. I mean heckle. Like, we're effing with you. Like, this is not an easy, like, listen, you guys want to do this? We're going to make it as hard as possible for you to get where we are. They would sit out there and legit heckle us. It was crazy. But then the first time I ever played, you know, along those same lines, the first time I was ever lucky enough to get to be a guest in the improv set with the main stage cast. I was hired as an understudy for the touring company, and they said, you can perform one night a week the improv sets with the main stage cast. And I went backstage, and one of the performers, who I won't name, who was a brilliant, brilliant improviser, but he was backstage, and I came back there and said hi to everybody. And he said, are you ready to get pimped out there tonight? And I was like, what? And he was like, are you ready to get pimped? And I was like, okay. And pimping is an improv term that means we as your scene partner are going to put you in difficult positions to see if you can find your way out of it. We're going to put you in hard positions. That's called pimping. You're taught in improv classes, not nowadays, not to ever pimp your partners. So he says to me, are you ready to get pimped out there? And I'm like, I don't even know what to say. I'm like, I guess. And he goes, because we're gonna pimp you out there tonight. Because do you know how you become a great improviser? And I'm like, nope. And he's like, you got to be able to take the pimp. That's all improv is about. You've got to be able to take the pimp every single time, turn it around and kill it. And we're going to find out if you can or not.
Wow.
So, yeah. And so I went out there to do the set with them, and he was not joking. Like, they pimped me nonstop. They were like, this guy does this accent. This guy's going to sing this song. This guy plays this character. That's all they did, was like throw hard stuff at me constantly to see if I could take it or not. I mean, hopefully I did okay with it, but like, that would never, ever happen now. So it was like it was a rougher time, and you had to really like be on your game always. You had to be on your game. It wasn't like show up and play off the top of your head. Like, I would show up with stuff cooking, like ideas ready. I'm on defense up there.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's also like, to an extent, like I feel like I have a two-prov team, and I feel like him and I know, you know, where my limits are, and I know what his limits are, but he also knows where he can challenge me, where I will be like, why are you doing this? But like, I will also be fine with it. And I think that like, is like, he knows I'm terrible at accents, but I will gladly do them.
Right.
So it's not like so I think it's different almost in a way. It's like a mutual pimping versus a, like you're talking about, where it's like, we're just going to see what you can do. It's like, hey, I know you can do this, so I'm going to have you do it. Versus like, I know you don't like doing this, but I'm going to make you do it. So I think that's the nice thing with certain like teams, like, or like with a two-prov team, like my two-prov partner knows exactly what I'm comfortable with, and like what he can also like push, and he knows that I will be like, yeah, I'll do it, versus things where I'm like, oh, why are you doing this? So I think that that's something to also be said as well, is that there is like a the pimping aspect is, it's tricky. It has to be a mutual pimping for it to work.
Yeah, like that. Yeah, there's a they were victimizing me in the story. But then once I was in a cast in Second City main stage, and you're doing 8 shows a week for 2 years. I did it for 2 years straight, and I'm in we're in that ensemble with those people every single night. So I'm up on stage with was lucky enough to be these wonderful cast members like Keegan Michael Key and Mark Evan Jackson and Mary Beth Monroe, and we know each other inside and out and backwards and forwards. And then you get that kind of camaraderie that you're talking about right now in your two-prov show, where it's like, you can kind of challenge each other, have fun with each other, mess with each other, put each other on the spot. in a playful kind of like bonding way.
Right, exactly. Totally different aspect. Yeah, so this is the point now where I would just ask if you have any plugs or any pitches. I know you have one because I can see it behind you,
Wow.
but
Look right here. Let me see. This is
yeah, you're much better at doing that than I am. I have a really hard time.
it's taking me a second to figure out it's like
Well,
that.
I can't see out of one eye, so
All right.
the whole flip is that really is rough.
We started a comedy writing training center
Mhm.
called The Sketch School. It is thesketchschool.com. We
It's
have
not just a sketch school; it's the sketch
the
school.
baby. Anybody can be a such sketch school, but only we are the sketch school. And thesketchschool.com. We have comedy writing workshops, sketch writing workshops, late night workshops, joke writing workshops, songwriting workshops, and lots of free events, free Q&As, free writing parties that are free and open to all in the community. So please check it out, thesketchschool.com, and see if anything up there interests you. And we'd love to have you give something a try.
Great. Mark, thanks so much for joining me here. I have one final question for you, which is the reason why I've been doing the Improv
Hey,
Summit.
you got it.
And that, yeah, well, I just do on both sides, then I can't miss. And and that is, I have a lot of people who have come up to me before pandemic, but even now, who are like, "Oh, you take a lot of improv. Where should I take improv?" And they say it exactly like that, in that voice. And I have a hard time answering this question because I feel like there's a lot involved in choosing a place to do improv to start, but even to continue out an improv journey for someone who wants to like go through a school or go through, maybe they want to go through something that's, less branded or whatever. The point is, it's a lot. And so I have that question for you that I would like to pose is, if someone came up to you and asked you, where should I take improv? What would be one piece of advice or something you would say to guide them on their improv journey?
When I was teaching when I was living and teaching and working in Chicago and in here in Los Angeles, both of those are cities where there were a lot of options, right? There are a lot of comedy theaters in both those places. So I would get asked that question frequently. And my answer to folks that are in a city like Chicago or New York or LA, where there are a lot of comedy theaters and improv options, it was always this. I strongly encourage everyone to go, if you're interested but you're not sure where, to go see the main shows. And we'll be open, everything will be opening up again after this pandemic ends,
Mhm.
right? But to go see the main shows at each institution. Go see a Groundlings main stage show and a Sunday Company show if you can, or maybe Cooking with Gas. Go see ASCAT at UCB. Go see a Second City premium show. Like, go see the main shows. And I think in most cases, when people go and do that, they'll find that as artists, they gravitate towards one institution. Like, and you might even not know why, but you'll feel like, oh, I kind of just clicked with and liked the vibe of blank. That's
Mhm.
where I'm going to go. Nowadays, I mean, right now in this moment that we're in the pandemic, a lot of people have thrown stuff up online, and there's classes on Zoom, there's workshops on Zoom, there's shows on Zoom. So it makes it even easier to be able to check things out, test things out, and see if you like the vibe at these places and what you connect to personally as a comedian, as a comic voice, and as an artist. And most places right now are doing some type of cheap or free try it out workshops. I mean, we are at Sketch School, cheap or free. Look, I did this way, but it's this way.
Yeah.
um
Welcome to
we
the
are at
club.
Sketch School, and a lot of the other, a lot of the other schools are too, of like, they're doing some sampler where you can get a feel for it and go, do I like this vibe? Like, is this connect to me as an artist? So that's my advice.
I love that. I think it's all about, I mean, connection. I mean, really connecting with the art, but also connecting with the people that you're learning from and taking classes with too. So I think that's great. The word connection, I think, is a really big word. I couldn't think of any other words to describe it. Just a really big word, full of letters. But the meaning behind it, I guess, is what I was saying, is that it has a more than one meaning. That's what I was thinking, I guess. Anyway, Marc, thanks so much for joining me. As always
Yep.
on this show, I say that's the last question, but as always, I'm a big old liar. And I actually have, I know, shocker, I know, I have one more question for you. And that question is, we've been talking a lot about improv. Do you want to do some improv?
Oh my goodness, I'd love to. I think this would be my first improv since the pandemic started.
All right,
15
let's do it. Here, you, and the are the suggestions.
are the suggestions. I'm choosing you.
You. Okay, great. Do you want to initiate or do you want me to initiate?
I can initiate this time.
All right, great. So this is a not specific scene at all based on the suggestion you, the very specific suggestion of you.
You cleaned up the shop. It looks good, Raymond.
Thank you, sir. I spent all day doing it. I love cleaning.
Yeah, it's great. And the I see the closed sign is up on the door. So you close the shop to focus on the cleaning, um, but prevented any customers from coming in. That's the impression I got.
Yes, sir. I just felt like doing one task at a time was what I could manage for now, and I knew that the shop needed cleaning, and I love cleaning, so I figured, why not just close for the day, let the renovations happen, and by renovations I mean cleaning, because I love cleaning, and just let it happen. Tomorrow we'll have a brand new shop for all the customers.
You know what? A lot of people might think you're a dumbass for doing that. I'm gonna
I've
tell you
heard that.
something. Well, if you heard it wrong because I'm gonna tell you something. Whoever said that, I'd like to smack them upside their head because I think that what you did takes initiative. You know, we can't we got to focus on our own self-care as human beings,
Wow.
self-care. And you can't clean a store and manage customers at the same time. It's going to be overwhelming. It's going to be overwhelming.
Wow. Thank you, sir. Everyone has told me that I'm a giant dumbass, and hearing that is not the case from you. It means a lot. It truly means a lot. You're such a giver. I thank you for this job, for the compliments. I you're the nicest boss I
Hey,
think I've ever
let
had.
yeah, no, I appreciate that, and I agree. I am the nicest boss, and people think because I'm old and grizzled, and I own a car air freshener shop that I'm some I don't know, lunatic, closed-minded asshole, but I'm not. I meditate every morning. I've been doing yoga through the whole pandemic, and I could I could show you some of that now that I know that you're tuned into self-care and self-awareness.
Sir, you don't have to do that. You've already given me so much. You don't need to give me all of your knowledge in yoga too.
I don't think you realize how gifted you are. Without even knowing it, you have feng shuied this entire shop. The way you position the pink air freshener display to the side of the door encourages openness and feelings of welcome and joy.
Wow, you read a lot out of that. I just moved it, shifted it so it wouldn't be lopsided.
If a person makes their way through the shop from the door down aisle 3 to the back, the way you've angled everything could even cause them to have an entire spiritual awakening.
Oh, maybe you're right. I mean, your knowledge is just such a gift. You're such a giver. I don't know what I could do without you. Honestly, I mean, you've given me everything.
Well, thank you. I mean, look, you and I toughed out this pandemic together. I mean, we managed to keep the shop open
Yeah, somehow.
somehow, even though nobody could come in. We were selling stuff outside. And you remember me, before this, I was a different man. It changed me. I used
Ornery, cantankerous,
I murdered 16 people in my life.
maybe a little more than ornery.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think I would have admitted that prior to listening to my Deepak Chopra cassettes that I've been ingesting over the last 15 months. But now it's like, just be, you do you, just be who you are and accept it, right? Accept it. Accept it. I'm sure you've done some effed up things in your life, Raymond.
Well, I mean, now that you mention it, I may have borrowed some of the funds from the business to make it look nicer. I mean, I didn't use them for me. I borrowed some of the funds to put it back into, invested back into the business.
I knew it, you thieving son of a bitch. This was all a ruse. I hate your guts. I got you on tape. I'm calling the police, but I'm kicking your ass first.
And Steen. Thanks everybody so much for coming to the Improv Summit. That's Marc. Check out the sketch school. See you next time. Bye.